does it take to be respected as a credible thought leader? Welcome to Business Without Barriers, the show bringing you relevant strategies to thrive and succeed in a volatile world, and the show turning barriers into bridges by bringing humanity back to business. I'm your host, Carmen Wild, and opening up his success vault today is Michell Levy. He's a global credibility expert, a human whose purpose in life is to serve those who want to be seen as credible and win the war against those in Dubious Nation. Michell has interviewed over 500 thought leaders from across the world on their credibility. This led him to uncover many amazing insights on what credibility really is and why it's important in today's world, making him the go-to expert on credibility. He's been a Silicon Valley-based thought leadership evangelist for 25 years and been the chairman of the board of a NASDAQ-listed company, and is a TEDx commencement speaker. He's also an international best-selling author of over 60 books, and has created 20 businesses in Silicon Valley, including 4 publishing companies that have published over 750 books. Michell, this is the 50th episode of BWB TV, which concludes season 1. I am so excited to welcome you onto the show today.
Oh, it's amazing to be here. Hey, to be number 50, that's awesome. Hey. If only I was 50 again. No, just kidding. I'm happy to be here.
So how about we bring that 50-year-old energy today, which, by the way, having spoken with you a couple of occasions, I think you've got more like 30-year-old energy, damn it.
That's quite possible.
I don't think you're ever working, Michell. I think you're just playing. Is that your secret sauce to accomplishing so much?
It definitely is the secret sauce. If I said this in my first TED Talk, if work equals play, you get to play all the time. And if you love playing, you get excited, you get passionate. If you get turned on by what you do and who you are and how you share it, you are delivering energy to those people who see you, who interact with you, and you get so much back by delivering value, by changing and transforming lives.
Yeah. So it's all about play. We've got it wrong all this time. We should have called business the play den or something. And work just play. You've had so many successes, like an incredible list of successes. I mean, just the fact that you've authored 60 books in itself is 60 successes. What would you regard as one of your most cherished successes to date?
Well, so that's such an open-ended question. So I got married, been happily married for 31 years, and we have a 22-year-old. Those are my best successes. So did you want to qualify that and say business successes?
I didn't mind what you were going to choose. It was totally up to you. So give us one business success that's really a special one for you.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's one of those things that it's sort of when people say we've gone to Europe for the last 20 years. So we pre-COVID, and we would rent a house for 4 to 6 weeks and invite friends and family. So that's a business success. And then people would say, what's your favorite location? Well, there's so many different reasons why. So let me give you different things that can be successful. In Silicon Valley, one of the successes that I particularly enjoyed was when I created the e-commerce management program for San Jose State University. It was an opportunity. I think what happens is I got really too busy at the time. I was teaching at the university. I was getting paid an obscene amount of money per hour for a teacher. but I was running out of time because my hourly rate was 4 times that obscene number. And so I don't ever quit things. What I do is I went into the dean. I said, listen, I need to I either need to do more or do less. And the dean says, well, why don't you create a program for us? Why don't you create a particular executive business program? Hadn't really thought about doing one of those. So what I'm particularly good at is thinking about how much time will it take for me to put the outline together. So I said, okay, let me meet with you 3 weeks from today, and I'll give you a proposal. So in that 3 weeks, I figured out what I would do and how it would happen. And I came back and I said, listen, we're going to start the program 9 months from now. We're going to create 30 classes. So I'll deliver 30 classes. And I don't want you to pay me a thing. I want to get a piece of the door. Now, here's the great part. The dean laughed at me because nobody had ever done anything in such a way. This is, by the way, during the dot-com days. It was 1999. And I created the first e-commerce management program in the world. And so the dean laughed at me because nobody had ever done anything that was worthwhile. He just thought I was being stupid, and was so fast to sign the contract. We ended up closing 4,400 seats, took in over $2 million of revenue, and I got a piece of the door. And they really didn't like writing me the checks because, unfortunately, the way companies are structured, to the way academic institutions are structured, is they're structured based on an industrial age construct, and they're not teaching how we should be living for tomorrow. And so they were unhappy. But the money I brought in wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for me to do that. So that was earlier on in my career, and it was a really nice way to think about the creation and execution process when the world needs to know new things.
Wow, a first in the world. Well, I'd say that's a mighty success story. And it sounds like that kind of gave you the sort of put you into a space, because everything you've done following has been to create things in fastest, like more rapidly, which we'll get to. Let's go into this idea, this thought leadership space. As a thought leader on thought leadership, why is it today more important than ever to be seen as a credible thought leader?
All right, so I know the audience knows this, but let's define what a thought leader is. Okay. Right? Because what's interesting is the definition today of thought leadership is so much different than it was 25 years ago when I first started working in the world. In the older days, what would happen is the thought leaders were crowned by the publishing company, by the recording studios, by the publishing media, the broadcast studio. So we were told what books we were going to read, what music we were going to listen to, what movie stars we were going to watch, because there was a small number of people who did that because it was difficult to share. The distribution of those assets were hard to get to. So there was a small number of people at the top who crowned the thought leader, whether it was the actor or the movie star or the band or the author, right? They would crown that. And there were rules that, for instance, on publishing companies, they wanted the authors to do and how to act and what to do. And so they were told, you need to be the best of the field. You need to do an extensive analysis and research of what happens globally so we could sell as many books as possible, because that's how the publishers made their money. And ultimately, these guys were catapulted to the top of the mountain, and they would bark orders, and their flock were expected to follow. And we didn't know better, and that's what we did. All right, so now comes the democratization of everything. And by the way, we haven't seen everything yet. So we'll just talk about the democratization of book publishing, the democratization of newspapers, of broadcast media, of podcasts, right? Of basically the things that we see today. And like I said, there's still so many more things that are coming. And now what happens is there isn't that group or small group of people up top. And so a thought leader means something different. The truth is, the thought leader is somebody who has thoughts on a particular subject area that you are excited about. So what's interesting is the thought leader no longer needs to be a global thought leader. As a matter of fact, global thought leadership is no longer as relevant because what's good for the world is not good for your corner of the world. Whether that corner of the world is geographical or whether it's commodity based or industry based or whatever it is. So what's interesting is you don't need to be a global thought leader anymore. What you need to do is more narrowly define who you serve and be the person who is recognized as somebody who knows around about that area. Now, let's add to that. You're no longer expected to sit on top of the mountain and bark orders. As a matter of fact, we don't accept that anymore. What needs to happen is you need to be cognizant of what your peers are doing in the space, because you can't do everything. And people in the space who are doing things, who are your peers, are doing amazing things and have a term that came out of the research called cred dust. And your job as a thought leader is to share other people's ideas, thoughts, and actions. Your job as a thought leader is to spread the cred dust. Your job as a thought leader is to get me to want to follow you, because you not only know your stuff, but you know what else is happening in the field. And I find your point of view fascinating. That's what a thought leader is today. All right, so now that we got the definition of thought leader, why do you need to be credible? Well, let me redefine what the word credibility means. The way the dictionary says is that credibility is the quality in which one is trusted. And what I'm going to say is that's only 1/3 accurate, because that made sense during the dot-com days, right? During the dot-com days, prior to the internet coming around and democratizing everything, all that you needed to do is that thought leader that stood on top of the mountain, you needed to trust him or her or not, and therefore they were credible. But you know what is more important these days? And you've heard the expression, know, like, trust. So credibility is the quality in which I know you, the quality in which I like you, and the quality I trust you. And underneath those three pillars, know, like, and trust, are 10 components. And so now what happens, in order for you to be a credible thought leader, I need to actually know, and when I say know, it's that I know, it's not that I know of you, is that I know you. And so let's specifically talk about that. I also need to like you. I also need to trust you. On the know part is I actually understand your desire to serve others. I understand your intent and commitment to do the right thing. I understand your integrity. And what's interesting is, nowadays, when people are out there, and even you look at CEOs of companies, and they start doing something that is either politically offensive to you, or they do things that are not right by a human nature perspective, they do crimes against humanity in a human way. Well, we're allowed not to want to do business with a company because the CEO is doing something in a certain way. You need to be credible, and credible is I need to know you and I need to like you. And you don't actually have to like somebody to be credible, but if you do like somebody, it really helps pull things along. That was too much. That was a lot to unpack, right?
I'm going to try and unpack it a little bit more. And maybe what we can do is these 10 components, I'm sure you've got that somewhere, and we can put a link to that in the show notes.
Oh, sure.
But what I want to, just 3 questions on this, because it's such an important area. How do you earn trust? What's the, you know better than most. So tell us, share with us.
So my first TED Talk, which was done in November of 2017, and I did a second TED Talk, but that's not released yet. So hopefully by the time this comes out, it's released. Otherwise, you just Google Michell Levy TED Talk and it'll be released sometime. That was done in January of 2021. It's not out yet. the first TED Talk, I actually defined what trust was because I felt like it was important. The first TED Talk was on being seen and being heard as a thought leader. And how I define trust is with three elements: vulnerability, integrity, and authenticity. Vulnerability, and by the way, the old thought leader was not vulnerable. They were expected to know all the answers. Currently, if you know all the answers and I know you're wrong, so when I demonstrate that you're not vulnerable, to me, you're not trustworthy. If you don't have integrity, you don't have authenticity, if I don't see who you are and you don't do what you say, you're not trustworthy. Now, when I interviewed the 500 people, I ended up adding one more component to the pillar of trustworthiness. And I didn't expect this to happen, but it was really interesting. So I'll give you a little bit of backstory and then I'll give you the answer. What would happen when somebody would do an interview with us? And I now turn that into our product. It's actually two products. It's Cred Clarity, where I help people define their clarity, and then a Cred Reel, which is a 5-minute credibility interview. So 5 questions in 5 minutes designed for people to know, like, and trust you. So that's what came out of doing the interviews. So when people would sign up, they'd get a video on how to prepare. And then I jump into the green room. And that was so before the camera gets turned on, and we'd answer the questions. And I would help give Cred clarity to essentially somebody's life purpose. And so here's a little bit of shocker. 98% of people needed clarity on who they served and the pain point they addressed. Right? Which to me, it's a shocker. So there was a guy who came into the interviews. And I asked him the first question, and the first answer should be somewhere around 1 to 3 seconds. And he gave me a 25-second response. And I said, well, most of the time people say it in a different sort of way. And then he gave me a 15-second response. So then I asked the question, would you mind if I do a little bit of coaching? His response was, yes, I do. I have my way of doing things and you have yours, and I don't want to learn yours. Now, if you're listening to this and you have a strong personality like I do, I'm sure you can imagine the response that came to the top of my head. And for whatever reason, my intuition said, why don't you let there be a little bit of awkward silence? So there was an extra second or two of awkward silence. And he says, it doesn't look like this is going to work out between us. In which case I said, yep, I think you're right. I wish you the best of luck on everything you do. And then we politely hung up. Now, let me ask you this. You're a CEO. You're running a company today. Would you want to hire somebody on your staff that doesn't want to listen to the board, doesn't want to listen to you, doesn't want to listen to, how about most importantly, other employees or even your outside customers because they know the answer? I.e., they're not coachable. The answer is no, of course not. So why do we hire outside experts who are so amazingly smart? They're supposed to bark and give orders and we're supposed to say how high? The truth is you should not hire these people. If you're not coachable, you're not credible. So those are the 4 components of credibility: vulnerability, integrity, authenticity, and coachability. And I was lucky enough to get the present of somebody being so transparent in who they are that I recognize that this is important. This is something that needs to be part of being trustworthy.
Crucially important. I mean, you can't go any further with the person. There's just a roadblock with people who are not coachable. So what's the point of having any smart people around a non-coachable person? So absolutely, 100% with you. As a coach, that's my number one non-negotiable. You're either coachable or I can't do anything. And that's it. It doesn't matter what smart tools I have or insights or whether I spend 1 hour or 10,000 hours with you. If you're not coachable, we're going nowhere. What is the connection between being liked and listening, which ties into what you're speaking about here? A coachable person, a non-coachable person, not going to listen. So what's that connection? Do we like people who listen to us?
So yes. And so far, I've identified him. And by the way, for those people that are interested, you could pick up the copy of the book Credibility Nation. So funny, it came out in Audible recently. I just finished listening to it in Audible this evening, and I was like, "Wow, I really said that stuff." It was pretty cool, actually, because I also read it, and so it's kind of fun to see because it's long enough that I hadn't remembered what all the things I did. It was fun to listen to me. So you can pick up the book Credibility Nation. And then we also have all the 10 components, MichellLevy.com/credibility. It's in a ton of different places. So I've given the 4 components of being known and of being trustworthy. There are 2 components on being liked. Mm-hmm. So one is, I've talked about this slightly, it's spreading cred dust. Mm-hmm. So it's sharing the thoughts and ideas and actions of other people. The second is to show respect by showing up when you show up. And so the way I defined it, although completely, I missed something, so I need to add that listening piece. But to me, showing up when you show up is coming early, being prepared, and coming with your heart. And so I either have to redefine that coming with your heart means you're being open and you're also receptive, or I need to add something else to that. Because what happens is you've heard this many times, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you should use that in the same proportion that you've heard. And most people are sitting there thinking about what to say next versus listening to what's happening now. And the only thing I could say to that is it is called the present for a reason. It is the present that you have, that you are alive, living on this planet at this moment, at this point in time. And the most important person in the world is the person in front of you right now. That's your present.
Yeah. What a gift. What a gift. And I truly think that it's one of the things I've gifted to. I make it a point to gift people that. And the reciprocal value that comes back to you just by being present and listening and hearing. Wow, you can't put a price to the value that's created and shared or returned. So tell me, Michell, are there shades of credible, or are you credible or not?
The 50 Shades of Credibility. That's a bad movie. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a great question. I mean, it really is a great question. And I get that question a lot. And what I have to say, it's not an on or off switch. It's not, you're not right or wrong. So in the most recent TED Talk, one of the things that I did, and what I'll say to you is there's this concept of being credible, and there are 10 components, and you want to see if you could fire on all cylinders. And I think if you actually have all 10, that's like the most magical person possible. And many people, it's just so hard to reach that level. And what's interesting, though, is that when I started thinking about credibility and started thinking about what I was going to do and what this movement was, there's not only a book, Credibility Nation, but there's a membership community called Credibility Nation, whose goal is to tip the scales between those that are credible and those that are dubious. So you read that. So what I recognized is that I'm dubious probably at least once a day. Like, I'll do something, I'll say something. Like when you and I first started in the green room, it's been a super long day. So my energy level was so low. And so you asked me the question, are you good? Can we move forward? And I said, no, I'm just conserving. right? I'm just getting myself ready. Now, if I didn't live up to the expectations of who I am by delivering, then that would be me not being credible. And if I wasn't ready, I would have said, "No, yeah, let's reschedule," right? And that's okay.
Yeah.
I believe that I do something dubious, the opposite. I needed, by the way, for Credibility Nation, I needed a nemesis, and I wanted a nemesis that was kind of fun, that was kind of playful. Dubious is not necessarily a bad thing. What happens if I do something that's dubious, I will either self-correct because I know better, or if I've done a good job as a credible human, I've surrounded myself with accountability partners. And when my accountability partners point out that I'm being dubious, if I change, then I'm becoming credible. If I don't change, then of course, maybe I'm moving to the other side. So what happens is, and this is one of the things I'll say to you, is when I was doing this TED Talk, we were in the middle of COVID. And so therefore I couldn't physically travel anywhere. So I actually had 30 different times I practiced. Reviewer number 10 gave me a gift. His name is Joe Lau, and I actually included his name in the actual TED Talk itself because his gift was so powerful. I needed to actually say it. So here's what Joe said to me. He goes, "Michell, those people who are dubious are innocent because that's what they were taught. And you know what? The people who taught them are innocent because that's what they were taught as well." And so many of the things we learn are dubious because that's what we were taught. And so part of it is just re-educating. If we can re-educate each other on what is credible and what is dubious and encourage credible, the truth is that is the prescription of what we need as humanity to actually create a much more humane planet.
I love the way you've put this, Mitchell. It's such a forgiving approach because yes, we all have off moments. We all have dubious moments and potentially innocently, like you say. Really, it's more like a constant progression to this credible, and we may come down in moments or on certain days, and we progress to it all the time. Love it. I love it, and because nothing is truly just black and white. There is that sort of middle way, and we're always trying to progress. So, and I love the idea of dubious.
By the way, for those that are not watching and are listening, your hand movements are so incredibly beautiful to see. It's so cool to watch you moving your hands around and talking that way. So I just thought I'd point that out.
It's the Italian in me. So what's your credibility detector? That's the quicker we can detect credibility, we can save time. Is there something that a person, a quality or things people do that you just, in seconds or in minutes, sure, I've got a credible person on,
Yeah, that absolutely is a phenomenal question. And I believe I can answer that personally for me, but I don't know if I can answer that like sort of is in a generic way for everybody.
Personally,
first of all, I'm going to say that we are all animals. And as animals, we have instincts. And sometimes the hair on the back of your neck will stand up like a cat ready to pounce. If that happens, listen to your instincts. When somebody tells you something that's just so too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. It's so interesting. Some of the 10 components of credibility, there are a couple telltale signs that I listen to for or pay attention to. Servant leadership. Is somebody self-serving or are they of serving others? And that's pretty easy to tell. Somebody who quotes other people's opinions but don't give their names, i.e. they don't spread cred dust, but they take credit for the stuff of other people. Somebody who's not coachable. Like almost every time in a conversation, I may actually jump into, I've seen somebody else do that before. Can I tell you what I saw? And it's interesting to hear the response. It doesn't matter what I say. That's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right? It's what's relevant is how people, because it doesn't, there are times where there are teachable moments and times where there's not. What I'm really doing every now and then is just sort of double checking how people show up. Right. And, I think vulnerability is one of those things that's easy to see. Like what happens if you're at a lunch meeting? Like you've heard this before. This is one of those amazing things. This is part of what credibility is. How many people have you heard where you're CEO, there's somebody in your management team or even somebody who you're looking at to be a board member, and you decide to go to dinner together and you go with your spouses and you see some odd behavior of how this person treats their spouse or how this person treats the wait staff because they want things to be perfect. Well, guess what? That is a lack of credibility, of not showing respect for humans, because we all make mistakes, and not showing respect. So those are, those are things that I see and perceive. And I just don't, I know there are many people that would be relevant, but some people want things in black and white. And I don't think I've spent enough time, honestly, I don't think I've spent enough time thinking it through to say, okay, this type of person should look this way. And this type of person, like if you're an auditory person, listen for this. If you're visual, look for that. And I don't have those answers down pat yet. And by the way, just to be clear, that's being credible.
Yes, exactly. I love
right?
it. And
I think
you
it's
don't
okay.
need, yeah, of course, you don't need, that's a question that could even change in different situations, the response to that. It's different people, different cultures, perhaps, different contexts. If there isn't a set response, which is being credible, so thank you. I was just interested to hear if there was something that came up more often than not for you. And that's really what you've given us. So I'm curious to know a little bit more about this thing of people not knowing the pain point. That's such a, you call it the CPOP, the customer point of, what's it? Point of pain?
I call it customer point of pain. Some people call it customer point of pleasure. You could call it the credibility proposition. Yeah.
So it's really interesting that, and I've just been recently through an exercise of trying to drill down and really finding those niche areas, and to do that you've got to look at the pain, the points of pain. So how do we you've obviously created a process to help people do this. Give us a few tips on how, if so many of us are not getting this right, what's the secret to getting it right? Do you have a few questions we could ask ourselves to nail it?
So let me give a definition. And by the way, so for those people who join Credibility Nation, there's a half-hour course on how to create your CPOP, and it just comes with membership. If you go to MichellLevy.com/CPOP, there's the definition of what a CPOP is. So let me share it with you. It's 10 words or less, 1 to 3 seconds. It needs to be short enough that it's memorable. If it's memorable, it's shareable. And one of the things that's most relevant is most people want to give it the answer. Like it's like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. They want the answer to life, universe, and everything. And the truth is, you need to do enough to establish the trust. And I'll jump back into that. So what needs to happen when you say your CPOP, your prospect will naturally ask the next question or make the next statement, which is tell me more. If you have a good CPOP and it sort of glosses over the eyes of the person on the other side, they're not your prospect, right? It's okay, you know. Now, it turns out if they're your prospect or the spouse of your prospect, a good CPOP is this pain point that somebody has come home with and said, this is something that bothers them. So typically the way it's structured is who you serve. So it is, and so here's what a lot of people do, big mistake. I serve authors, consultants, entrepreneurs, business owners, and Tom and Mary's dad, right? So they come up with 10 words, like it's supposed to be 10 words, and they fill it up with. So pick the thing that's most relevant. Mine is big. It's humans that want to be seen as credible. Mm-hmm. Now so it starts with humans, and then what comes next is either a direct pain point, or in some cases it could be an aspiration point. Right? And in some cases it's both. And so there's no right or wrong on this. What happens is it's, so it could be C-level execs who don't see the big picture. C-level execs that piss off their management team. C-level execs that can't build a team. Now, nobody wants to admit to that. But deep down, so you have to be careful on what you say and how you say it. And so, but deep down, if you're running a company and your best people have left over and over again, there's something wrong. So C-level execs that lose great talent is a beautiful CPOP, right? Because if that's you, or if you're the spouse of the person that is, or you're sitting the board, managing that person, you're going to say, tell me more. So when you're establishing trust, so what happens in terms of the 3 pillars of credibility, know, like, trust, the CPOP is directly under trust. Now, what most people do is they've been trained that the first thing they say is their value proposition. Just so you know, the value proposition should be the third thing they say. So the value proposition typically goes like this: I or we do blah, blah, blah with blah, blah, blah to solve blah, blah, blah. There's nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, the value proposition can be a great answer to the next question, tell me more. But you don't have permission to tell me your value proposition until I ask the question, or make the statement, tell me more. Here's the reason why. If the first words out of your mouth is I or we, there's a percentage of the population that I saw as part of those people I interviewed that have salespeople blockers. Just like their ad blockers on websites, a salesperson blocker, what typically goes up, their antenna go up when they hear somebody start the words with I or we. Like, wait, they're trying to sell me something, and they don't hear the next 30 seconds. So instead, if you gave this construct of a CPOP, you're breaking through every salesperson blocker there is.
So how do you start the CPOP then? If it's, because don't you think, what's the first part of, isn't it, I serve executives or whatever with this problem?
It's the hardest thing in the world. Because you want to, and I have to tell you, once I figured this out, it took me 2 or 3 weeks to actually train myself to do it. Right? Because I didn't have any examples to look after, right? And it's so hard. So what happens is there's so many different ways you have to reposition the statement. So if somebody says what you do, like one of the things you can say, I've heard this expert talk about this thing called a customer point of pain. Let me tell you what my CPOP is. and then you just jump into that,
Uh-huh.
right? When I look at my LinkedIn profile, one of the things that's important in the tagline is that I articulate my CPOP. Well, it doesn't make sense for me just to put humans that want to be seen as credible because it's out of context.
Yes.
So in LinkedIn, I put the word serving in front of it.
Yeah. Okay.
But when you say it, it's you're not McDonald's, serving, billions of hamburgers, right? It's serving is almost as bad as saying I or we. So what I'd say is try to reframe the question in such a way where the first thing you're really saying, right? So for instance, when I said something about humans, one of the things that my company does to deliver credibility is we do done for you book publishing. Right. And so when that's the hat I need to wear, what I'll often say is, and I'll just start with busy professionals looking for more credibility with a book that don't have time. And you just somehow have to start, and it's really hard to do, by the way. It's really hard when people get a new CPOP, when I'm in the green room and they get a new, it's really hard for them not to say I serve or I start or I help. And so what I do is I try to train them. And I say, okay, I'm going to say, what's your CPOP? And when you hear those words, the first words out of your mouth need to be, because I'm serving up the question. So here's what's interesting. If you're running a networking group, instead of saying, stand up and tell me who you are, if you said, stand up and talk about your customer point of pain, stand up and talk about who you serve. Much better question.
Really nice. That's very valuable what you're sharing with us. And there's this whole thing constantly about niche. And if you can't niche if you don't understand the customer point of pain really, really, really well. And the more you understand the pain, the more you can drill down even deeper, and the better your marketing message becomes. Such a crucial, powerful thing we need to try and get so much better at as business leaders.
Well, Carmen, let me add to that just for a second, because we need to get at it better for marketing, as you mentioned. But here's what's more relevant. If you've done it right, your CPOP is your purpose in life. Right? So what you do, what you serve, how you show up should be what you love doing, what you get energy out of. We talked about playing, if work equals play, it should be playtime. And by the way, if your CPOP is not playtime, it's time to find a new job or re-describe the job or the thing that you're doing. And what happens is if you show up every day living your purpose, people could see that, people could feel that. It's part of that energy flow. You've seen many times where there are two executives and they both were doing the same thing, but one seems very mechanical and somebody else seems very passionate, and you want to follow the passionate person. Well, you want to follow them because they're living their purpose. A good CPOP is living your purpose. A good CPOP, let's not use the word marketing. A good CPOP is your compass. It's the compass that guides you. And we've been taught not to talk about our feelings. We've been taught not to talk about our purpose. We've been taught not to say, hey, I have a compass that guides me. Well, here's what's really interesting. If you have a really good CPOP, as soon as you see that, you see the world differently because it's your compass. Now, you see it differently, but the world doesn't see it differently. So the next step, go to your LinkedIn profile, go to your website, and make it search engine optimized around your CPOP. Because then what happens is you're magnetizing your compass so that when other people recognize and state out loud, hey, I need somebody who can help me, I need a firm that can help me solve this problem, they get attracted to your page because your page is talking about it's SEO optimized around your CPOP. And all of a sudden they go, oh, this is somebody I should talk to. And then, if we've done a cred reel together, there's a 5-minute video where people get to know, like, and trust you. And then guess what? You get invited to the party. You don't get hired based on this, but you get the pass, the golden ticket that gets you invited to the party.
This is so good, Michell. You've just collapsed so many things that people have challenges with in terms of the customer point of pain, the niche, the purpose. What the hell is my purpose? I don't know what my purpose. You've just collapsed all these major pain points for entrepreneurs by just sharing that. So thank you so much. Let's talk about books. I have no idea how you've authored 60 books. You maybe can share that with us and publish so many. So first question is, with so many different ways to get your message out there, vlogs and blogs and webinars, and what still gives a book so much weight in comparison to all the many ways that you could get your message out?
Yeah, it's a fun question. As a matter of fact, I just answered that one today. So I'm going to tap my memory. I'm going to stall for a second by telling you what I did, and then I'll tap my memory of what I said. I've got a YouTube channel, a Credibility Nation YouTube channel, and I have a show called Dear Credibility Expert. And I answer as many credibility questions as I can in 10 minutes once a week. And today's question, it was really funny. It was from a fellow publisher who ultimately asked the question, why are books important? And the answer is, from the Gutenberg press, from the time of the Bible, books had this construct that the author of the book is powerful, that the author of the book is a thought leader in their space. And as democratized as book publishing has become, that is still the case. Now, how do you kill your credibility? A better way to think about it is, how do you add crud? Crud, just as another term I'll throw out that came from the interviews. Crud is those small, minute things that you do that hurt your credibility. For me, as a publisher, one of the most relevant things is when I look at the copyright at the bottom of a web page and it's not the current year, or it's not structured properly. Or if you look at a book and it's laid out poorly, there's so many misspellings. And so what happens is crud hurts your credibility. And crud, the best analogy I could use, it's like plaque on your teeth. If you have a little bit of plaque on your teeth, you're not guaranteed a cavity. But you start adding more and more plaque, the better chance of cavities. You start adding more and more crud, the better chance of the cavity of you not being a credible person. All right. So what happens with books is it's a way in which you can demonstrate, it's a way in which you can show to your prospects that you're credible in a particular area. Now, as a publisher, it's so funny. I had a guy, this is about a month ago now, and what he said to me when I got him on the phone, he goes, Michell, I just shouted your name out to a group of people and he said, you gave me the best business advice ever. I couldn't remember the conversation. So I was like, oh, so what did I say? He said, you told me that you didn't want to publish my book because it wasn't the right thing to do. And I'm like, and that all of a sudden it brought everything back. And the point is, he had money in hand. He wanted to do a book, but it wasn't along in what we're talking about now. It wasn't along the lines of the CPOP of where he was going. It was something historical. And he was hoping, because this is what people sell, that once you do a book, you magically, like, people get attracted to you. But the book had no correlation to where he wanted to go. It was just something he'd done in the past, which is kind of cool as a book, but it's so much easier and better to hold up a video camera and record 3 or 4 videos and put them on YouTube or Vimeo. A whole lot of time, money, and effort saved, and probably more people will look at it than actually a book. And so I don't want to take somebody's money if it's not the right thing to do. And so that's what he said. So what happens is the book that you create for you. Now, this is nonfiction books for business people who want to use a book for success. I'm narrowing down the niche to that particular audience. The book that you want to create is the book that will open up the door to the next prospect. Simple. So what is the title of your book? I'm going to tie it all together. The title of your book is your CPOP. Because if your CPOP is something that you actually, that your customers are looking for, and you actually have a book by that title, and you've reinforced inside the book that you have expertise, not that you're the expert in the world, that you have expertise in that area, what the book will do is open up the door. And that's what we need to do in today's world, is we need to be seen through the noise so that we can open up the door to have the conversation. And that, when you were working synchronously, that's what will help us. And so what I'm going to say is, one of the things that I found as part of the interviews is those people who are great synchronously, 80% of them kind of sucked asynchronously. When you looked at their web presence and you looked at their LinkedIn profiles, they did not show up in as good of a way as they show up when we talk, synchronously. Well, a book is the best asynchronous tool that you have to communicate your credibility, assuming that it's done on the topic that you want people to see you as. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally.
Okay.
Loving it. I'm listening to every word because I'm loving the thread that's coming through, and how you bring it all together and create synchrony, which is what we want. There's another thing that stands out is you don't even have to write the book all yourself, right? We've got to a time and place where all the content we put out doesn't have to be all our own content. We share others' content. Does the same apply to a book? Maybe what I mean there is you could have it could be co-authored, it could be ghostwritten. You don't necessarily have to physically write it yourself.
There are many different ways to do a book, and here's what I'm going to say. Typically, if you're going to write a book, and I like books that are 120 pages. I kind of look the look of the feel of the spine. When it's 80 pages, it's too small. If it's 160 or 200 pages, it just seems a little bit daunting. I like 120 page books. 120 page book, if you write from scratch, will take you 120 hours, assuming you know what you're doing. And if you're going to publish yourself, it's about 200 hours. So that's 320 hours. What we do, one of the services we have a ghostwriting service. And let me define what ghostwriting means. There are some people that ghostwriting means give them a topic and they'll write the book for you. Oh, that's not credible. It's not credible at all. So it turns out that for the book publishing business, I have two superpowers. And with the credibility stuff, I unleashed a third. So my third superpower is clarity, or cred clarity, right? The first two superpowers are building systems and pulling the genius from somebody's head. So what we do, and everyone's different, right? So that's okay. What we do is the most important thing in the ghostwriting process is your title and table of contents. Now, if your title is your CPOP, your table of contents just reinforces your CPOP, that is the blueprint for the book. I can do that in an hour, right? So we sit down and we come up with your title and table of contents. And then what I do is we do a 3-hour interview, because 3 hours is, now typically if you're a visual personality, I could do it in 2. If you're an oral personality, it takes me 3. It just because oral personality need to tell through stories, and stories take a little bit longer to process. So I do a 3-hour interview. And what I'm doing is I'm following the path of our table of contents because we already have a project plan. We have a blueprint. So it is 100% your book. It just so happens based on the interview. And what happens is some people, and I'm not a big fan of this, but people do this, is they take the transcript from the conversation and that's your book. And I don't like that as much. So I think we have a new style of book. What we do is the book itself has 140 aha messages. And I'll share, we do hardcover. So I love that for those just listening. That's the hardcover book, and I'm going to open up a page. And what I particularly like about our content is we actually publish color on the inside, because it's not about trying to make money by doing a black and white book and keeping the cost down. The construct of us doing a book is to put you, the author, in the perspective that you're the most credible person you can be, given what you're doing. So we do color on the inside. And then part of what we also do here, there's a QR code. The QR code points to a video of you talking about the section, because we live in a multi-structured world, right? There are multiple platforms. So you might as well have videos talking about your book, and it's another way you could market. And then the primary content is 140 bite-sized quotes. Because, the thing is, for somebody to sit down and read a 25 or 40,000 word book, that's great. And that's what we used to do in the old days. But if you're using a book as a tool to open up a door, and that aha number 45 is the thing that a company needs support with, well, you send a physical copy of the book with a handwritten note and a sticky pad pointing to aha number 45, and you say, look at this. And you can, in literally a minute or two, convince somebody that they should talk to you, because you've smacked them in the head of the particular pain point that you've addressed in your book, which happens to be their C-pop. And they go, oh, this is somebody I should talk to. And so that's what we do. And the fact that, and here's the cool part, I only need 10 hours of the author's time. So remember, I said it took 320 hours. So what happens is you're actually buying time, and you have 310 hours to do something else that's a more valuable use of your time. And so in today's world, there are so many things that I believe are so much more valuable than actually sitting down and writing the book. You need a book. You absolutely need a book. And for some people, they're writing the book because it's cathartic. That's okay. For some people, they're writing the book because until they write the book, they don't have the ideas. That's okay too.
Yes.
But you don't write the book because you could write it better than somebody else can, when your talents and skill sets are better used elsewhere. And that's when you would want to consider using somebody else to help you write your book.
Now I know how you've managed to pop out 60 books. It's this very smart way of writing a book, which is also very we're in a world of fast and easier and bite-sized chunks. So it's relevant. It's relevant. So what is your vision for Credibility Nation?
So I'll give you a macro. So the macro vision is this picture right here. I've never before in my life been able to have a single picture and say, this is my life purpose. So for those who are listening only, it's a scale. And what's heavily weighted, what's being dragged down, is the side of the scale that says Dubious Nation. And what's lifted high in the air, and the letters are much smaller, are the words Credibility Nation. And so the vision is, before I die, I would like us to tip the scale between credibility and Dubious Nation. And this is not something that I can do myself. This is not something anyone can do. This is something we have to do. And one of the things, so I have the publishing company, and I do the credibility stuff, and that funds Credibility Nation. So my goal in 2021 is that Credibility Nation gets to the point where it's standalone, from a financial perspective. And then in 2022, we'll figure out how I need to put the processes in place so that it lives way past me being on this planet. And the most important thing that I'm ignoring at the moment, having sat on the board of a public firm, I don't want to have outside money come in that has strings. Because I don't know where credibility will take us. I don't know how it'll morph over time. And I want to do what's right for humanity. And that was what the most recent TED Talk is. We could bring back our humanity by doing nothing more than acting credibly. Right. And so the future of Credibility Nation is a place where people can come and surround themselves with the right people.
What a joyous place that is, when we can surround ourselves with the right, incredible people.
It sure is. And so the call to action is, if this resonates with you, come and join as a member.
Yeah.
If additionally, one of the things I'm doing this year, because I need the help of others, is I'm looking to people like yourself who want to run villages inside Credibility Nation, who the currency of Credibility Nation is just that, it's credibility. And the village are like-minded people within your niche, your part of the world. And so if this resonates with you, if you feel the calling, the urging to actually run a village in Credibility Nation, this is the time to do it, because I don't know what to charge. So what that means is I'm not charging anything. You just need to be a member of Credibility Nation. Right. And because I'm hand picking, I'm doing what you asked initially. You said, Michell, how do you know if somebody's credible or not? Well, in 2021, it's Mitchell's choosing. Like, I get to talk to somebody and I feel like they're the right person. I go, okay, I tap you if you're interested. If you think you're that person, I'm happy to talk to you. Once we get to 2022, where I can't do that, we'll need to put in some teaching, some learning, some certification. There'll be cost. We may have other services, so there'll be a cost to be that. So this is the right year to play. And here's the cool part. And this is what I believe is what I do. I'm going to be learning from the village leaders as I help them grow their villages this year. They're going to teach me what I need to do. They're going to teach me how to learn and provide an environment for other village leaders to be successful. And so this is the right year to play. And next year will be a different challenge and focus that we address.
Now, hopefully we're still playing. We can address another challenge, but playing at the same time.
Absolutely.
Michell, if you could share a deeply meaningful message straight from your heart with the world, what would you want to share?
Based on this conversation and what we've covered so far, what surprises me in life is when people say they want something, but then they do nothing about it. So I'm going to say something that I want. I'm going to say something that I believe you and everyone else wants, and I'm going to tell you what we can do about it. The world that we live in today is so much more dubious than it was 10 years ago, than 10 years before that. And we are becoming and going down a path that is so dubious. It's like any bad science fiction movie. And we can fix this. And fixing it is absolutely simple. Look at the updated definition of credibility. And when you're interacting with somebody else, the two of you should be talking to each other and defining what is credible and what is dubious, and encourage credible. And you say to me, Michell, but one-on-one, that's not going to do it. If we all start doing that, if we all start talking in those words, we will make a difference. And it is really, literally that simple. And so if you like, I can't tell you how to fix global warming. I can't tell you, a number of different things. But what I can tell you is there is a new definition of how you can live and work and play credibly. And if you require that, not in a negative way, but if that is part of what you need to thrive on, to live on with those people you surround yourself with, guess what? The people who don't want to play with you, they'll slowly be disappearing. And the people who you then start interacting with, the people you start playing with, the people you get to see, you get to know, you get to love. How cool would it be if all the people you interact with are people you respect and you love them and they love you back? And it really is as simple as acting and being as credible as you can. And when you're working and interacting with other people, that you actually are consciously making a decision of credible versus dubious. That would be what I'd like to see all of us start doing.
Beautiful. Thank you. And thank
You're
you
welcome.
for a magical hour. So much wisdom shared with us so generously. Thank you for that, Michell. And thank you for being the incredible human being that you are, bringing Credibility Nation to us. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you. Thank you so much.
Oh, I so enjoy spending time with you, and your questions and your focus and your receptiveness to learn and grow and share and present and things that you've taught me. I mean, it's a very nice reciprocal relationship we have. And I so enjoyed spending time with you here. So I'm honored to have had the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. The honor is mine. And this has wrapped up the first season of BWB TV. And our aim was, let's bring humanity back to business. And what a way to end off this season with a beautiful, credible man, Michell, talking to us and sharing with us what it means to be credible, what it means to truly, truly be human. And let's spread cred dust. Let's bring, in fact, we've brought our humanity this year. We've needed to do that to get through all the barriers that's come our way. So let's deepen our humanity. Let's spread the cred dust and connect deeper, collaborate even more, and co-create magic. And when we do that, we truly will create a new human story and a credible nation. Thank you for sharing these beautiful moments with us. And I look forward to you joining me and our incredible guests on season 2. Thank you. Lots of love.